So do you guys want to hear about who I met at my coffee shop recently? Because the coffee shop I work at is right next to the live performance theater in town.
Okay.
And a bunch of hotels. So we get some celebrities through the coffee shop. Notably, we have had Alton Brown, the Good Eats guy, the Cutthroat Kitchen guy, the announcer for Iron Chef. One of my personal childhood heroes, despite some political disagreements we do have. He helped me learn how to love cooking, and you can't really replace that.
That is a very cool thing.
Yeah. And then we also had the opening band for Casting Crowns, or Mercy Me, one of the two. I always get them mixed up, but not the big band, just the opener.
Do you remember what the opener's name was?
We Are the Messengers. And
okay.
I think it was Casting Crowns. I'm 90% sure it was Casting Crowns.
Oh, sure. They come through here often enough.
Well, they're almost famous.
Yeah, right? The opener was really nice. They were all a bunch of Irish dudes, a little bit patronizing on the talking to someone queer presenting who in conversation identified to them as a Christian. He got very, very patronizing with me very, very quickly.
Oh.
And he's like, I've been a Christian for like 17 years or something. And I'm like, as I am 26. So I've been a Christian longer than he has been, no matter what way you slice it. So I'm just like nodding along, and he's like not taking any of my theological like conversations. Like he keeps trying to proselytize to me, and I'm like, sir.
Yeah, well,
you're gonna get nowhere.
From my experience in the Christian rock field, I don't think they ever stop doing that. You could say literally anything, and if they've already decided that they need to try to reach you, so to speak, they're just gonna keep doing it.
Yeah,
They're dumb like that.
Yeah,
Christian rock's weird, man.
They are.
It was frustrating, but I don't want to talk about those dudes.
Well, yeah, that's
I want
not
to
what
talk
this
about
is
the
about.
person I met this week. So, do you guys want to guess what B-list
would
celebrity I
love
met?
to
Was
guess.
it Vanilla Ice? Because he does have a history of being in this area in the summer.
Does he really?
Yeah, he hosted the like local biker rally for like 3 years in a row.
Oh my god, you're being dead serious.
Yeah,
That's insane.
actually.
That's wild.
I wish it were Vanilla Ice. Are you kidding me?
Was it Ben Schwartz or Tom Middleditch?
No, Ben Schwartz is not a B-list celebrity in my heart.
In your heart, but
So
clearly what we need to do is aim lower. So was it the replacement singer from Boston?
Does this guy have a name?
Not that I've ever been aware of, no, but he was also in the area a few years ago.
No.
Was it Simon Cowell?
Damn, you guys are guessing
Was it
better
Simon
than this
Pegg?
person deserves. No, I would lose my shit if it were Simon Pegg.
Oh, absolutely.
No, it was
Kermit the Frog.
You guys
was
are going
Fozzie
too cool.
Bear?
Too cool for school. No. It was
Master Chief.
No, still too cool. You gotta take it down like 30
I'm trying to think
cool
of less
notches
cool
here.
people. Who can I think of that's like not cool at all? Was it Shaggy Two Dope from the Insane Clown Posse?
No, you're still, unfortunately, still too cool.
Oh my gosh.
Was it one of those guys from Twisted? The other clown
No,
band?
it's not. It's not music. Unfortunately, it is.
Okay,
It's
okay.
worse.
Was
It's
it
a comedian.
Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh?
Okay, you've gone too low now. But you're like in the correct uncoolness area.
Okay.
All right. Was it oh shit, I just forgot his name. I don't know who I was about to say. Fuck.
Can I say who it is now?
I guess.
I'm ready to
You
do
may
the
as well.
reveal. Okay.
I was probably about to guess it.
It's former podcast referee, and we've referred to him. TJ Miller.
Oh.
TJ Miller.
That was my next guess.
Minor character in Underwater, a film we all loved, except for the fact that TJ Miller was in it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
did you hand him a stuffed rabbit and then lie to him about it being a real rabbit?
I hate him. Okay, so here's what happened. I was at work.
Yeah.
This man walks in, and I think to myself, this man looks and sounds exactly like TJ Miller. And then I think, I hate TJ Miller. And we get a lot of stoners in. So I'm just going to
Sure.
assume it. I'm not going to project ill will onto this poor stoner who's wearing this faded ass orange t-shirt with a like screen printed graphic on it. I'm not going to do it. So I'm polite. I make the drink. He leaves. A few days later, like the next day, I get a text to a group chat that I'm in that's like, guess who I'm talking to right now? And this friend has recently talked to me about how one of her friends in Pittsburgh has a bar regular that she recently found out was Tom Savini. So I was like, oh yeah.
Whoa.
So I was like, holy shit, is it Tom Savini? Like, did you go to Pittsburgh? Are you hanging out with your
Yeah.
friend? Did you meet Tom Savini? They're like, no, it's way less. It's I wish, but no. And then they just sent a GIF from Deadpool. And I was like, ah, boo, I think I met him too. I was
Well,
like,
just
well,
didn't
now
think
that I
it was
know,
cool enough to say anything about it.
well, when people who are famous come in, I look up if that person's in town so I can like figure out the odds that it actually is that celebrity.
Right.
Yeah.
But I didn't even bother with TJ Miller because I hate him so much. So I after my friend was like, oh, I'm like currently talking to TJ Miller right this second, I like Googled, and sure enough, he was in town for the past couple days for a comedy thing. And I was like, oh, I guess I was TJ Miller then.
Did he buy your book?
No, I don't think he did.
What a
Which
Dumbass.
all
He should have.
Should have bought the
the
book.
Christian rock band guy bought my book.
Oh, really?
The Irish dude did. Yeah. I'm like,
That's kind of neat. Hope he actually
it
reads
was,
it.
yeah, if he read it, I think maybe there would be something there, but I don't know if he ever will.
Did Almond Joy buy your book?
No, he did not.
Did the guy from Casting Crowns buy your book?
In theory, my book has been in the same room as the guy from Casting Crowns, but
Did Tom Savini buy your book?
no, but I bet I can make that happen.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now
Okay.
I'm 2
Future
degrees from
goals.
Tom Savini. Yeah, I'm about to see my friend who has the friend who knows Tom Savini because we're gonna watch Insidious. So
Oh, that's fun.
Oh, neat.
yeah,
The newest Insidious?
yep.
Ooh, yeah.
I haven't
you-
seen it. Me and Piper watched the second Insidious movie, I think
I
last
should
week.
probably watch that. Maybe
I
I'll
like
do.
the
That's what
second
I'll
one.
do while I'm drawing.
You liked
I
the
feel like-
second one?
I remember liking it when I watched it. I haven't watched it since then. Why did it
It's,
suck?
it's a bit problematic.
Oh no!
Those movies go real hard on the current topic.
Oh
trans-
wait, shit! I
so-
just remembered who the bad guy is in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's right. All I remember is Patrick Wilson being a good actor. Fuck. Okay. Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's an issue. Yeah.
Yeah, you know. If you know, you know. Well, I'm glad you got to meet TJ Miller.
I'm not,
I'm not.
honestly. I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm
TJ
glad you were able to
TJ
get
Miller,
through it
if you're
quickly.
listening to this,
Go fuck
TJ Miller, if you're
yourself.
listening to this, I was nicer to you than I should have been.
TJ Miller, if you're listening to this podcast, shut it the fuck off. I don't want you to hear
Right.
it.
I don't want you to hear my voice.
TJ
You,
Miller, if you're listening to this, Nina saw the Emoji Movie in theaters.
I did see
That
the
is
Emoji
actually
Movie in
true.
theaters.
Yeah, unfortunately. Now shut it off.
I feel like that's a good break point.
That's a great break
Mhm.
point.
Oh, we're so good at podcasting, guys.
We're the best.
We're
we
the
are, dare I
best.
say, the best to ever do it to us.
I would say that.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Casual Obsession, the horror movie podcast where we talk about horror movies and sometimes horror books in April for April Fools. My name is
Yeah.
Emma. With me today is Jeff
Hello.
and Nina,
Hi, it's me, Nina.
and not Noah.
Noah's not here today.
Noah is not here today. He
Fell in a well.
had to use the bathroom really, really bad. And he has been in there for 3
So
days
bad,
now.
It has left him too weak to podcast.
And that is the canonical reason of why Noah is not here today.
If you look it up on the fan wiki for this episode, it'll say Noah was absent because he had the shits.
Yeah. Yep. That is absolutely the case. But thank you all so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate you. Today, we are talking about Let the Right One In, the 2008 Swedish horror film that my partner thought was a romantic comedy.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Wait, like they saw it and then they were like, that was supposed to be a romantic comedy, or that was what they thought it was? Okay.
They haven't seen it. But we were talking. So today I went and met Piper's family for the first time.
Oh.
And on the way back, they were talking about they're playing a D&D game, and they're like, afterwards we can hang out. And I'm like, yeah, I just have podcast recording tonight. And they're like, oh, what movie are you doing? And I said, Let the Right One In. They're like, isn't that a romantic movie? And I'm like, kinda.
Sort of. It's got a little bit of that.
I was like, it's a horror
gothic
movie.
romance thing going a little.
Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, so we're talking about this movie, and I'm excited to talk about this movie. For those of you who don't know what this movie is, Let the Right One In, as mentioned, is a 2008 Swedish romantic horror film directed by Thomas Alfredson, based on a 2004 novel of the same name. It is about this little kid named Oscar who is getting bullied a lot at school, and he meets this little like strange girl on the playground one day who is a vampire. And the story goes from there. Little girl just moved into town, and things start happening, and things continue to happen, and kid continues to get bullied. And that's the little quick synopsis for you. So, somebody please tell me you have critical reception of this movie pulled up.
Ooh, I have IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes pulled up, unless someone has more than that.
I happen to know what Roger Ebert gave it.
Ooh, nice. Okay, so let's start with Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb.
Yeah.
So Rotten Tomatoes looks like a 98%.
That's
which is
pretty high.
That's really fucking
very
high.
Good score. Yeah.
It is 90% audience score.
Damn.
Yeah, that's really high. And it's a 7.9 on IMDb.
That's also very high for IMDb.
For IMDb, yeah.
Yeah.
What about the Ebert?
Yeah, what did Ebert say?
Gave it 3.5 out of 4.
Wow.
Damn. Okay.
He was very into it.
Yeah. Did he have any notable quotes that you wanted to pull out for us?
He really liked the movie's specific take on vampires. Thought that it approached the subject in a really cool, very serious kind of way. Not what he expects from a typical vampire movie is what he was saying, basically.
Yeah, that is absolutely true.
Yeah.
They added a little bit of lore to the vampire mythos, I think. Something I hadn't seen before that we'll get into later.
I have heard of that before, actually. It's just not a commonly used one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely one that I've heard of before that just doesn't make it into a lot of media because it's one of those that you have to have a specific, we'll talk about it later, but you have to have a specific scenario for it to come up, and I feel like that just doesn't come up in a lot of
not often enough.
Interesting. That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But what did you all think of the movie?
So you might have been able to tell by my reactions to the critical ratings.
Yeah.
I did really like this movie. I liked the vampire lore. I love vampire stuff. I just wasn't really into this movie that much for whatever reason. I liked it. I'm glad I watched it. It didn't do anything special for me.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe like a 7.
Okay.
Ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's okay. Jeff, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
I'll go next. I have had a tough time with this one because I like a lot of parts of it, but there's a lot in it that I have had a little bit of a tough time figuring out what it's doing in there. You know?
True. Yeah.
That said, there's a lot in this movie just in the way that it's executed that I really like the the textures of it, the sounds, the shots, the music, everything. I really like the soundtrack. The music is all really beautifully written. I feel like the Bones and All soundtrack took a couple of cues from it, maybe. I feel like the execution of Bones and All in general kind of took a couple of cues from the flow of this movie, because it has this very, like, I don't know, I'm going to say Swedish Midwestern feel to it. I can explain that later if I need to, but it feels really Midwestern to me in a lot of ways. Kind of reminds me of some stuff that I've seen in, like, We're All Going to the World's Fair and other such things, but obviously this predates that. And, like, just all the little, like, Foley noises and stuff. There's just so much focus on, like, the little ambient noises in the scenes where the characters are talking to each other and stuff. A lot of snow crunching noises, floorboards creaking, that kind of thing. And I'm always really entertained by movies that include that as part of their soundscape and that use that kind of thing to emphasize silences, that kind of stuff. I really like a lot of that kind of thing.
True.
But the stuff that I'm not quite getting out of the story, and it may be that this movie's just, like, maybe a touch smarter than I am or something, that there's just obvious things I'm not noticing or something like that. But the fact that I feel like I don't get it definitely takes some points off. I'm gonna give it, I think, a 7.5 or a soft 8.
Okay.
Because I want to speak favorably of it, but I don't know, beyond the, like, textural sonic experience of it, what good to say necessarily,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is both of those are absolutely fair. I think for me, I'm gonna give it like a 8.5.
Okay.
I enjoyed my time with it, which is surprising because, for one, I haven't watched a lot of foreign horror.
This is one of my first Swedish movies specifically.
Yeah. And as we know, I don't like old movies, part of which specifically is because of, like, weird audio. And I feel like this movie also had some, like, weird audio issues of just like reminiscent of, like, old 80s movies. And so, like, those were things that bothered me, but I was like, foreign film, so I was okay with it. But I enjoyed my time with it. I was looking into this as a movie for us to talk about because it's a movie that kept popping up whenever I looked up, like, queer horror films.
Right.
And, like, this kept popping up. And, like, when I was talking to everybody else about it, I think, Jeff, you specifically were like, how is it queer? Isn't it about, like, a little boy and a little girl? And I was like...
I had never seen it before now, so I don't think I said that, but...
Okay. But somebody said that, or, like, something along those lines. And so I watched it just to be like, how queer is this movie?
Right.
And watching it and, like, learning about it was interesting. And I'm excited to talk about it. And I think it's worth a watch. If you want to give, like, a foreign horror movie a try. This one's not, like, super intense or anything. Like the hardcore horror fans will always be like, oh, you like horror? Have you ever seen...
You ever seen
whatever
Martyrs?
movie?
Like,
Yeah, Martyrs.
Exactly.
It's always French. It's
because the French movies go, like, when I say they go the hardest, I don't mean they're good. I mean they come at you the hardest.
They go, like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, emotionally, they're hard to watch.
Yeah.
They're rough.
I think it was between this and another, like, horror movie that kept popping up was Titane.
Oh, yeah, that's the one where the woman fucks the car. Yeah.
That's like...
Oh,
And then
Yeah,
the
I
I
car
know
remember.
gets her
very
pregnant.
little about the
Yeah.
movie. I know she fucks a car and has the
I've seen
car's
it.
baby or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, Jeff
whole-
watched it.
Yeah, I watched it. I could not make a lick of sense from it.
I was like, I don't know that I want to watch that one.
I got no idea what to do. I checked it out because it was directed by Julia Ducournau, who is the same one who directed the movie Raw, which I've heard is really good.
Okay.
I've
So
also
I was
heard
just
Raw
kind of
is
like,
good.
ooh, same director as this movie that I've heard really good things about. Why don't I give it a shot? And then I get the woman who fucks the car and gets pregnant with the car's baby. And I just went through the whole thing like, what the fuck is happening? What is this? It does
Yeah.
have one of the funniest groups of characters that I've ever seen in a movie, which is a group of firefighters who turn their fire hall into like a rave anytime that they're not actively fighting fires.
That's wild.
So it's just like between the fire trucks and stuff, they have a DJ set up and they just have like French flags hanging everywhere, which is really funny to me.
That's
Yeah.
so funny.
Yeah,
That's great.
but
That's
like
so
I
love
don't
that.
know what the hell that movie's doing though.
They just wanted to tell a simple story about a woman and her relationship to her car.
The
That's
car's
it.
a bit of a deadbeat, honestly. Not very involved as a dad.
Doesn't have a job.
No, he just sits there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so yeah, those were like two of the movies that kept popping up, and I was much
Right,
more
right.
interested in watching this one.
It's
and I
the more
had-
fun watch, certainly.
Yeah, I had a pretty good time with it.
Yeah.
So, but as always, before you jump into any kind of movie, you want to know like what you should worry about. Are there any triggers
Yeah.
that
What do you watch out
or
for?
content warnings that you should know?
Yeah.
And this one definitely has a few. There's suicide and self-harm. There's child endangerment, bullying.
A good bit of it, yeah. It's a central theme, really.
Yeah, for sure. What are some other ones?
Little implied pedophilia, if
Yeah.
you're watching out for that.
Yeah,
What was the other thing? We talked about this shit.
weird cats.
We
Oh,
got
yeah,
some-
weird
Yeah, we got
cats.
some very, very 2008 ass CGI cats.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of the cats die
No.
No?
that I remember.
No, they win.
I am just gonna describe the scene in full, just in
Yeah.
You may
just,
as well.
uh,
Yeah.
Might as well. So there is a
Slight
scene, just so
spoilers.
slight spoilers, where a character is attacked by a swarm of cats, and it's the CGI is janky, but it is an uncomfy watch.
The
so
scene
that's
still
something-
hits.
Oh, it hits, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it does. So just I feel like that might be something that some people might want to be aware of.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense.
Beyond that,
Um,
it's kind of mostly typical vampire stuff.
Typical vampire stuff, you know, the blood
The
and
blood.
the such.
Yeah. Torture.
Oh yeah.
So Vampire has a helper who collects blood for her. And I think you could describe some of those scenes as kind of torturous.
I suppose you could, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, with that, those are the things you should know about for the movie, be aware of. But Nina, famous knower of how scary things are, how scary was this movie?
It's not. This movie is not scary.
It's kind of not.
It's just not. It's
Yeah.
not scary. It is definitely like if you're like sensitive to like blood or darker
Oh,
themes,
sure,
I
yeah.
guess. But like
Yeah.
generally on the scale of scary movies, it's not.
It's really not. Yeah, I was telling Becca earlier that I feel like it's only loosely a horror movie.
Yeah.
But like not even in the way that like something like Bones and All felt like it was only loosely a horror movie. It's like this is softer than Bones and All was in its depiction of its
Mhm.
violence even.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Bones and All gets the horror tag alone for that opening sequence with the hand.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I would
it's
vote.
just it's so much more explicit with the way that it shows its events whereas
Yeah.
this one kind of doesn't do that so much.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
can pick out 3 scenes off the top of my head that I would say would slot Bones and All into the horror category.
Sure.
For this movie, I can think of maybe one.
Yeah, Bones and All has like characters and scenes and arcs that are intended to cause some kind of revulsion in you, whereas this kind of like doesn't do that quite
It's
so much
gothic.
for the most part.
It's gothic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a dark setting, it's a dark set of things that it's working with, but it's not like trying to scare you later or something.
Yeah. I think the most horrifying parts of this movie are, for one, the scenes where they're collecting blood, I think.
Sure.
Um,
I like
For
those
two-
scenes. I think they're cool.
yeah. For 2, the cat scene,
For sure.
very, very scary. And 3, the kid's haircut.
Oh, you didn't
Yeah,
like his
that's
haircut?
just
Okay, all right.
It feels just like from what this is maybe not true. I feel like, first of all, I've seen a lot of little boys with that kind of haircut.
100%.
And secondly, feels very Swedish.
It does,
very,
absolutely.
very much. Also, the story is set in like 1981.
It is in the 80s.
So
it's very good about not being too obvious about its setting to the point where like, oh,
it doesn't push it really. It feels
It's funny.
timeless almost.
I did not realize it was set in the 80s. I thought that's just how
I would never.
Sweden was.
Yeah, it's just that nobody pulls out a
the
phone at any
2000s.
point.
Yeah.
It's just it's kind of like actually we talked about this on the Rare Exports episode. Rare Exports was supposed to be based in like the like what early 90s or the early 2000s or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing in the movie to really indicate that. It just kind of happens.
Mhm.
This is sort of the same way. It doesn't push its time setting on you at all. It just happens.
Unlike all American media that happens in the 80s, it's like, this is happening in the 80s.
Yeah, you're looking at
We're
you,
gonna talk about
Mandy.
80s stuff. I was thinking about It.
Oh God. Yeah. Oof. Stranger Things.
Stranger Things, Ready Player One, even though that happens in the future, all the 80s stuff is like, have we talked
Yeah.
about the 80s
The
in
Black
30
Phone.
seconds?
Mhm.
Oh, the Black Phone.
Black Phone's actually way better about it than the other stuff we've mentioned.
It is, but it's still egregious.
A bit.
Um,
Yeah, this
but
doesn't do that kind of
yeah.
stuff. It just tells its story.
Shocking.
Yeah. I would never have been able to pin a year on it if I hadn't literally read it in a synopsis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we want to move to spoilery section?
I feel like
Let's
it's
do
time.
Okay, so if you haven't watched the movie already and you're interested, go watch the movie, come back, and you can hear the rest of our thoughts.
Yeah.
But for those of you still with us, I'm going to read through the Wikipedia plot summary. So buckle up. Oscar, a meek 12-year-old boy, resides with his mother, Yvonne, in western Stockholm suburb of Blackburg in 1982. His classmates regularly bully him, and he spends his evenings imagining revenge, collecting clippings from newspapers and magazines about murders. One night he meets Ellie, who appears to be a pale girl of his age. Ellie has recently moved into the next-door apartment with an older man, Hakan. Ellie initially informs Oscar that they cannot be friends. Over time, however, the two begin to form a relationship and exchange Morse code messages through their adjoining wall. Ellie learns that Oscar is being bullied by schoolmates and encourages him to stand up for himself. Oscar enrolls in weight training classes after school. Earlier, Hakan stops and kills a passerby on a footpath to harvest blood for Ellie, but is interrupted by an approaching dog walker. Ellie is prompted to waylay and kill a local man, Jock. How is it pronounced?
Jokke.
Do you remember? Jokke?
Yucca.
Jokke.
Yeah, and also just for reference, anything spelled with an A with a circle over it, that's pronounced as like an O or an O kind of a sound. So it's like Håkan.
Oh, so Håkan? Okay.
Yeah, when you see
got
the
it.
title written as like Lat den rat one comma in, or it's pronounced like Lot den rata comma in.
Okay. Well, look
Wow.
forward to
Yeah.
me continuing to mispronounce
Oh,
the
totally,
names
go
of these
for it.
characters. So Jokke, making his way home after having said goodnight to his best friend, Lake. Okay. A cat-loving recluse, Josta.
Sorry, I'm also scrolling through the synopsis now, so I can try and keep
Oh my
up.
God.
We're going with Josta. Witnesses the attack from his flat, but in disbelief decides not to report the incident. Håkan hides Jokke's body in an ice hole in the local lake. Håkan makes another effort to obtain blood for Ellie by trapping a teenage boy in a changing room after school. When he is about to be discovered by the boy's friends, Håkan pours concentrated hydrochloric acid onto his own face, disfiguring it to prevent the authorities from identifying him. Ellie visits Håkan in the hospital. Håkan offers her his neck for feeding. Ellie drains him of his blood, and Håkan falls out the window. Ellie goes to Oscar's apartment and spends the night with him, during which time they agree to go steady, though Ellie states, "I'm not a girl." During an ice skating field trip at the lake, some of Oscar's fellow students discover Yoke's body. At the same time, the bullies again harass Oscar, who hits their leader Connie in the head with a metal pole, splitting his ear. Sometime later, unaware that Ellie is a vampire, Oscar suggests that he and Ellie form a blood bond and cuts his hand, asking Ellie to do the same. Ellie, thirsting for blood but not wanting to harm Oscar, laps up his blood before running away. Lake's girlfriend, Virginia, is subsequently attacked by Ellie. Virginia survives but discovers that she has become painfully sensitive to sunlight. Virginia visits Yosta, only to be fiercely attacked by Yosta's cats. Soon after this, Oscar confronts Ellie, who admits to being a vampire. Oscar is initially upset by Ellie's need to kill people for survival. However, Ellie insists that they are alike and that Oscar wants to kill and Ellie needs to kill, and encourages Oscar to be me for a little while. In the hospital, Virginia asks an orderly to open the blinds in her room. When the sunlight streams in, Virginia bursts into flames. Locke tracks Ellie down to the apartment. Breaking in, he discovers Ellie asleep in the bathtub. He prepares to kill Ellie, but Oscar interferes. Ellie wakes up, jumps on Locke, and feeds on his blood, killing him. Ellie thanks Oscar and kisses him. However, an upstairs neighbor is angrily knocking on the ceiling due to the disturbance. Ellie realizes that it is not safe to stay and leaves that night. The next morning, Oscar is lured out to resume the after-school fitness program at the local swimming pool. The bullies, led by Connie and his older brother Jimmy, start a fire to draw Mr. Avila, the supervising teacher, outside. They enter the pool area and order the children, aside from Oscar, to clear out. Jimmy forces Oscar under the water, threatening to stab his eye out if he does not hold his breath for 3 minutes. While Oscar is being held underwater, Ellie arrives and rescues him by killing and dismembering the bullies, except for the most reluctant of their number, Andreas, who is left sobbing on a bench. Later, Oscar is traveling on a train with Ellie in a box beside him. From inside, Ellie taps the word kiss to Oscar in Morse code, to which he taps back small kiss. And that's the movie.
Yeah.
That sure is. That's
and the
movie.
way that it's all shown is really nice because it's set in Sweden in the winter, so there's like snow everywhere all the time, and it looks fucking gorgeous because that's just how Sweden looks in the snow. And then and it's always like kind of lingering on these like long wide shots with the like this kind of feelsy soundtrack playing in the background, and all the snow.
I always like
crunching
the
noises
set piece where Ellie and Oscar will meet kind of like at a playground that's like in between like this kind of box shaped apartment complex.
Yeah.
And I feel like that set piece is always really cool every time we go there.
It's
I think
really
it looks
cool
really
set of
interesting.
scenes.
Yeah.
I love the way so many of the shots in this movie look. Like it's put together really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of shots that are very artful. There's a handful of shots that feel like just kind of presentational, sort of matter of fact.
Yeah. One thing I forgot about was how murderous Oscar is.
He is embracing the classic Scandinavian tradition of just murdering your enemies.
Yeah, so he, throughout, especially earlier in the movie, has a knife and imagines killing like the bullies and kind of like acts it out.
Yeah, he acts out like saying the same stuff to them that they always say to him, because for whatever reason, Connie, the main bully, is always calling him a pig and telling him to like squeal for him and stuff. So that's the kind of stuff that he's saying as he just like stabs this tree over and over.
Yeah. And I think one of the comments on YouTube, which is where I watched it, said like, even if Ellie wasn't there and the events of this movie didn't happen, Oscar seems to be the kind of kid that would probably become a murderer in the future.
He definitely is shown to be kind of on his way to it. Yeah. Because like he's so interested in like forensics and details of murders and and always has that knife with him.
Yeah, for sure.
Does he actually kill anyone in the movie, though?
No.
No?
The most damage he does is kind of hitting the bully with the metal pole
Yeah.
and basically
That's what I
taking
thought.
out his ear. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just alluded to that the bully can't hear out of that ear anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, how hard did you hit him, Oscar?
Or how precise was his aim?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
there was an awful lot of blood, but like ears are just like that.
Yeah, true.
It was still healing. It doesn't seem like a lot of time went by after he hit him.
No, it
so
really doesn't.
I'm
No.
assuming that it's just like a healing process kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it did seem like you couldn't hear out of that ear.
Yeah. But also that bully was just a jerk. So
He was.
He was
Fuck
a
him.
shit.
Caught
Yeah.
him.
gotta take what you get when people retaliate to you being an asshole.
Really, yeah. Revenge is cool and good sometimes, actually.
Yes.
We support it on this podcast.
A little bit.
We support revenge.
So I want to talk about my favorite part of this movie,
Okay.
Okay,
which
I'm
is
ready.
how it does vampires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I really enjoy how this movie does vampires. I think as of now, in my lifetime, my favorite vampire media that I've seen is Midnight Mass, obviously,
Of course.
Obviously.
and What We Do in the Shadows.
yeah.
And I love both of those, not just because they're incredible, well thought out pieces of media, but also because I love the way that they do vampires. I love how in Midnight Mass, no one knows what a vampire is. It just happens. Vampires are a thing, but no one knows that.
Mhm.
And then in What We Do in the Shadows, everyone knows what vampires are, and all the lore about them is true all the time.
yeah.
And it's just kind of taken for granted. If they have to spell it out for you, they will. But usually, it's just like, yeah, vampires can hypnotize people and turn into bats and not eat real food, and they need to drink virgin blood. We all know this.
Of course.
Mhm.
I like one thing that in what we do in the shadows specifically. I don't think this is a thing in Midnight Mass. Is the whole you cannot go into a place unless you are invited in.
Oh
and-
yeah.
And that's not really explored in What We Do in the Shadows all that much. It's taken for granted, really. It's like, oh, we have to go to a club where the bouncer will invite us in.
Mhm.
And I don't know that it's almost kept up with it all in the TV series. I think they kind of realized how hard that was going to be to keep up with. So that doesn't really happen as much.
Yeah.
In this movie, there's a scene where Oscar and Ellie are in the apartment complex. A few times before this, she's been like, hey, you have to invite me in. I can't come into the apartment. And it seems like it doesn't matter if she's been in a space already, because she's been in the apartment before through the window. It seems like if she's crossing a new threshold, she has to be invited in.
Mhm.
And Oscar's like, well, what happens if you aren't invited? And I really like that for the first time I've ever seen in vampire media, I've never seen this done before. She's like, you know what?
Let me show
like,
you.
Fuck around and
She's like,
find
"You're right."
out.
I don't know if she'd ever tried it before. I don't know if she knew what was going to happen.
It seems like she
Um,
does, and she's just doing it to show him how serious it is.
Yeah.
So she comes in and starts bleeding out of every orifice on her
Everything.
face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously Oscar freaks out and gives her a big old hug and is like, you can come in, you can come in. And it's really sweet. It's a sweet scene. But it was that's one of my favorite ones. I like how they kind of, the scene where he offers her candy, and there's a scene just like it in the newest episodes of What We Do in the Shadows, where
Well, and
the
in the original
vampire's like,
movie.
surely a little bit of food will not hurt me. I really want a little bit of food. And then
Surely
it
it won't be
hard
so
cuts to the
bad.
vampire puking.
Yep.
Yeah, it was really sad in this too because like Oscar's trying to like be sweet and everything, and this is
Yeah.
before he knows that she's a vampire, I think.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, this candy is like really good. Do you want one? We can share." And she's like, "No." And you could see he's obviously
Yeah,
like
he's just like
kind of
"Oh."
caught off guard, and he's like, and she feels bad, and she was like, I'll have one." And so she has one.
Yeah.
And then the next scene cuts and she's throwing up and he's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Gosh.
Yeah, it's so sad. And the What We Do in the Shadows the newest version of this joke, because they do it a lot. It's
Right, yeah.
that one of the characters finds out that there's a like Little Italy like version of her country that she grew up in, and they
Oh
have
my
like all of her
gosh.
like cultural foods. And it's been 2 blocks
Oh.
away, but nobody told her this whole time. So she gets really excited about this cultural food, and she literally like scrapes this kebab with her teeth and immediately projectile vomits.
Aw.
So it's also like sad in its own way, where it's like, oh, I like saw her pick up the food and I was like, Nadja, I am begging you.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, no, I liked how this movie did vampire lore. I liked how when the other character was turned into a vampire, Virginia, I liked that she seemed to figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
Which is like, how do you
Mhm.
jump to that conclusion? She has been hearing tall tales from everyone else in the group for a while, so it's not out of the
Right.
question that she would come to the conclusion of like, oh my god, I'm a vampire.
I'm a
But I
vampire
really
now,
love
yeah.
that she did get there. She's like, there is
Yeah.
no other explanation. I am a vampire. And
And I can't let
and-
this continue.
I
Yeah.
can't let this continue. And which is this may be a bold comment to make, but I totally respect that conclusion
Yeah.
in vampire movies.
Yeah, I get it.
It's like, yeah, I get that. That's sad. That was a really cool scene. The effects in that scene were incredible.
It looked good.
When they open the blinds and she like
She
goes
just
up in
bursts
flames
up into flame.
immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They made it look real good by just not overcomplicating it. The light
Yeah.
hits her and
I'm-
she's just on fire.
I'm sure if I wanted to, I could make some judgments about this movie and vampires in love the same way that I did with Bones and All, but I don't have the effort to draw the conclusions, I think, because we see 3 romantic relationships, kind of 2 at least, maybe 3, throughout this movie. Between a human and a vampire. We see obviously Oscar and Ellie, and we see after Virginia gets turned how that affects her relationship, which is super sad.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then we kind of have Ellie's relationship with her familiar, but
Yeah.
I want to talk more about that later on.
Yeah, there's other
Yeah,
stuff
me too.
happening there for sure.
For sure. And I think I would love to hear more because, as talked about earlier, I had never heard about the cat stuff in reference to vampires.
Oh, right, yeah.
What, like, is it literally as simple as like cats don't like vampires?
Cats,
Or
yeah, I don't recall what the folklore explanation for it is, but it is an older piece of lore that cats just hate them.
Yeah.
Like, I
That's
think
so
it's something about
wild.
how they can like sense that there's something off about them relative to other humans or something like that.
I'm gonna Google it.
Yeah, because
Typical
like
cat
I know
stuff.
the like not having a reflection in a mirror thing was at the time because mirrors were made using silver. So because vampires don't interact well with silver, it's like the silver of the mirror wouldn't show their reflection, which kind of unintentionally means that modern mirrors would probably show up a vampire's reflection because we don't make them with silver anymore.
Mhm.
Other frequently unused vampire lore is that they all have OCD, and specifically
yeah,
they're
the
really
vampires
focused.
have to count.
Yeah, specifically they're really focused on numbers. So like some people will tell
Is
you
that why the count is a vampire?
that's why the count from
Yes,
Sesame
that's why
Street is
the
a
count is a
vampire. Yes.
vampire.
That is the reason for that. Apparently, it's part of the folklore that like if a vampire is chasing you, one of the ways to escape them is to like spill a bunch of rice on the ground or something, because they'll
Emma,
have
do you
to stop
remember-
and count all of it.
Do
Mm.
you remember the time that we did that to your tiefling bartender? Like, I don't know if you'd meant for that to be canon beforehand, but like we spilled a bunch of like beans or something and she had to stop and count them all and we like snuck off while she was counting all of the beans.
I vaguely remember this. Very vaguely.
Oh,
I think I remember that tiefling, and she was very sweet.
I loved her. She's one of my favorite NPCs. She was a cutie.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did that to one of Emma's NPCs one time. I think that might have been how we got to the underground fight ring, was by distracting her by spilling beans.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this
That
isn't
makes
a
sense.
podcast about your previous RPG games. This is
Why is
I
it?
was about to get to
Let
another
everyone-
right. I was
Wait,
about
so
to get to another vampire lore, but go
Oh,
on.
yeah.
I Googled cats hate vampires.
Sure.
And the first thing that came up was a Quora like response
Oh, good.
about
That's where the real knowledge is.
yeah,
It is so true.
why are cats said to protect us from vampires and demons? Where did these ideas come from? And the answer is cats have been associated with magic and supernatural powers for centuries. Many cultures believe that cats have the ability to ward off evil spirits and protect their owners from harm. One theory is that cats were seen as protectors because of their hunting abilities. They were thought to be able to keep rodents and other pests away, which were believed to be carriers of disease and death. Another theory is that cats were associated with the goddess Bastet in ancient Egypt.
Of course, right.
Bastet was the goddess of home, fertility, and childbirth, and was often depicted with the head of a lion or a cat. She was also believed to have protective powers, and many people would keep cats in their homes as a way to invoke her protection. In medieval Europe, it was believed that cats could see and protect against evil spirits and witches. By keeping a cat in the house, it was thought to protect the inhabitants from malign influences. It's worth noting that these beliefs are rooted in superstition and are not scientifically proven. Cats are fascinating creatures with unique personalities, but they do not have supernatural powers or abilities.
Well, but
Thank you, Cora.
it is true that they will
Thanks, Cora.
keep rodents away and stuff, and rodents do carry disease. So to a certain extent, the cat does protect you.
Mm-hmm,
It's worth noting. There's a crumb of rationality at the bottom.
Yeah.
And I love how it feels like in no small part it's due to the fact that cats will just like stare at like sections of the room where it doesn't seem like anything's going
100%.
on.
Cats will just do shit. Yeah.
Yeah, true. But what other vampire lore did you want to talk about, Nina?
I don't remember now.
Oh, no.
No! I'm so sorry.
Well, then until you
I'll think
remember,
about
I'm going to talk about stuff, just some small things that I liked in this movie.
Okay, absolutely.
When Ellie first gets introduced to Oscar, I really like the way that she's like standing on top of the jungle gym and then like jumps down. But the way that she jumps, it's like really obvious, of course, that the actress is wearing a harness, right?
Yeah.
She doesn't jump down and land in the way that any human ever possibly would because she flew, actually.
Yeah.
And there's not like attention drawn to it. Oscar doesn't like call it out or something. It just happens and the scene just moves forward. I really like that just as like a little touch. And lots of times when you see her like climbing up or down stuff, you can kind of just watch that same exact thing happening. Like, I don't think they ever had her climb on anything without a harness. She's just always floating a little bit. I think that's a really cool, just small thing to be doing.
Yeah. I also liked, in regards to her character, so we don't know how old she actually is.
Around 200.
Around 200.
Textually in the movie or just
textually
via
from the
Wikipedia?
book. The book has...
Okay,
I'm going to talk about a little bit of stuff from the book here. Not that I've read it, but I read a synopsis of it earlier today, which makes me basically an expert.
I've read a little bit of some stuff in the book. Yeah.
It's stated in the book when you get her backstory that she has been 12 for about 200 years.
Okay. Yeah. I like that. So her mannerisms and a lot of her personality is still very childlike.
Still 12. Yeah.
Yeah. But there are times where she talks to Oscar, like when he talks about being bullied and everything, where she gives him advice almost like a parent.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, you need to like stand up for yourself and like protect yourself and like this sort of stuff. I thought that was really kind of an interesting dichotomy.
It's an interesting dynamic
So,
they have.
I really can't get around not talking about it for much longer, so I'm just gonna say what I gotta say.
Yeah.
A big part of the reason I don't really love this movie is I feel like on two separate fronts it's reinforcing a lot of harmful like kind of thoughts about and common like misconceptions about trans people.
Right.
Number one, that trans people are victims of pedophilia.
Mm-hmm.
Which is Ellie's backstory, and number two, that trans people groom and manipulate children.
Yeah.
So both of those things about Ellie's story prevent me from actually really enjoying this story or this relationship or the way that it's told or the way that it's queer in any way, because it feels like I can't fully get into it without getting hung up on. That's why I said like, oh, like I know that she's 200 in the book,
Sure.
but like the only way I could possibly really get behind her relationship with Oscar is if she's not 200 explicitly in the movie.
Yeah.
I don't like vampire age gaps in most media. I find Edward Cullen and Bella to be like a weird age gap.
Well, they are.
Because she's
They
still
are.
a minor when they meet. Stuff like the several 100-year-old vampire meets like an adult who is an already like a mature adult when they meet.
Oh, sure.
It's still a
different.
weird age
Still
gap,
weird,
but
different. Yeah.
right. This is maybe this is the biggest age gap and the most weird one. And if
Mhm.
she acted like a child the entire time, that would be one thing. But you're right, she does act like a parent to him and explicitly encourages him to do things that will ostracize him from society and prevent him from having a normal childhood. And secondarily, her relationship with the older man, she orders him around a lot and seems to have most of the power in that relationship.
Yeah.
And it so
You get
that's
Sorry, you get the sense
go ahead.
that he is an older version of Oscar,
Mhm.
where she probably met him when he was a child, and he fell in love with her, and then just kept kind of protecting her as he grew older.
Could be.
And then now Oscar is doing it.
Yeah.
That is
So-
not their dynamic in the book, unfortunately.
Again, with this kind of thing, I'm
Well, yeah,
trying.
we watched a movie.
yeah.
We didn't read a book. To be fair.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to take the book stuff into account, but since
Sure.
there is stuff that was deliberately changed from the book so that the
Right.
read would be less like that, I want to think that like a lot of that other stuff is all. I also want to just take the movie entirely on its own, as well as taking into account where it comes from.
Right,
But yeah,
right.
that's just something I felt like I needed to say as we get
Yeah.
into talking about dynamics and stuff. Is that's a big part of why, while I really like a lot of the artistic and storytelling and like lore of this movie,
Right.
the story itself didn't really stick with
The
me.
characters are
Yeah,
very easily
absolutely.
condemned. Yeah.
That makes absolute sense. And I think an important thing, if this was made today, and I know there's a TV show that was made
Canceled
last
after
year.
the first season, yeah.
Yeah, I did hear
don't-
about that. I have not heard anything one way or another about that.
Yeah, I don't know how they handled things, but if this story was to come out today in a new and original IP, I think it would be heavily criticized.
Likely.
For the exact reasons that you pointed out, because those are the cultural conversations around the trans community right now.
Yeah.
But those did not really exist like as much, if at all, in 2008.
Not nearly as mainstream, at least, yeah.
Yeah. And so, and especially like in Sweden, I don't know what the conversations are like there.
I've got
but-
absolutely
Yeah, that's
no
the other
idea
thing is
what the
Europe-
environment was like in Sweden. No.
Europe is real different about the way that they have conversations about queer identities just in general. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that is very important points to bring up. I'm glad you talked about them. Because there is the definite weird dynamic. And
For
there's
sure.
like a couple of scenes where I think specifically when they're trying to show Ellie's like hunger or something, they swap her out for like an adult, like
yeah,
a
they
creepy
do,
looking adult
they do
or
something
something.
They do some
with
weird-
her face, yeah.
that was the thing that I wanted to talk about.
Oh.
But they do. I really liked the effects they did on her face and on her, specifically on her eyes in that one scene where she,
Ooh, yeah.
where the lights, like she's got the cat eye reflection and then the lights turn on and her pupils shift. I really
Mhm.
liked that. But
Yeah.
that's apropos of that's what I wanted to talk about was like,
Yeah,
that was
you
just
know, I
a-
love a weird eye
That's just a
thing.
really cool moment. Yeah, at first it's doing like the Mike Flanagan glint in the dark, and then the lights come on, you see the pupils, and you just watch them change as they like adjust to the light. It's so cool.
And it's
Yeah.
so like well done that for a moment you wonder if you actually saw what you thought you saw, which is always a really fun thing
Yeah.
to see in a horror movie.
Yeah, most of like the CG in this movie is very easy to spot and stuff. Most of the effects are like, not bad.
And
right,
she's
but
very
it's
much
still
wearing
obvious.
contacts through a lot of the movie.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
But that specific scene, when
Absolutely.
you watch that little shift happen, it looks incredible, actually.
It looks really really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, but that's not to do with anything. That was just something.
Oh no,
yeah,
it's
just
to do
like-
with plenty of things.
The eye scene was really cool, but in the scenes where they like swap her out with like an adult or something,
Yeah, whatever it is
kind
that
of
they
have
do
those
there.
movements.
Whether that's just like,
Like,
a
it-
set of appliances on her face or what.
Yeah, I was just like, whenever that happened, it was just a reminder to me of like, this person is, I don't know how old this person is, but they're not 12 actually.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to remember in the context, you know?
Yeah. Something else that they do, actually, this is kind of neat. That's not that actress's voice.
Yeah,
They
no, I heard
dubbed
about
her
this.
with a different kid who had like a little bit of a lower, darker, and more importantly, scarier sounding voice because
Whoa.
they wanted her to sound androgynous and evil, basically.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, no, I noticed that especially in some of the later scenes.
Yeah, the dub is a little bit obvious in a couple of points.
Yeah.
Was that
I think-
part of the audio issue that bothered you, Emma?
No, I didn't even notice that.
Oh, okay.
Um, the audio issue that bothered me was just the best way to describe it is like older movies sound staticky sometimes, kind of.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
and
I know what you
this
mean.
had like that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the romance element of this movie definitely is problematic. But I think,
Yeah.
and when you go to the book and look at the book, the origins of
Yeah, then
kind
it's
of
like, oh, they cleaned it up
Ellie's-
actually.
yeah, the origins
Yeah,
of
like, oh, this is
Ellie's
the
like gender identity
software.
stuff is like very problematic,
It's
but they
real
don't touch on that
fucked
in
up,
the
yeah.
movie at all.
Yeah, and it is
And-
written by the same guy. The screenplay is written by the author of the book, so this is the way he wanted it adapted reasonably.
Yeah. And I don't remember if it was also in the movie. In the movie, she reiterates like a few times that she's not a girl.
She says it like
Mhm.
twice, yeah.
Yeah. And I think specifically in the book, she says, like, I'm not a girl, but I'm not a boy. And just kind of like, think a little non-binary vampire kid.
Yeah, like which would be a cool idea if we weren't arriving at it the way that we do.
Yeah.
Should
I've
we
seen people use.
What's up?
Go ahead. Oh, I've just seen people use they them pronouns for Ellie, but she never seems to have an
Never
issue in the story
specifies.
itself
Yeah.
with the pronouns as much as being called a girl.
Yeah.
Very Janet from the Good Place core.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
Very much. Yeah, in the synopsis of the book that I read, it starts using, after it describes her backstory, it starts using he, him pronouns in reference to her.
That's something that
So-
I saw.
Okay, but like,
Was because it's from Oscar's point of view, and once he learns that information, he changes how he refers to her internally.
but when the author I saw a quote where the author was talking about the character and he was using she, her pronouns in reference to her.
Mhm.
So
What does that say about Oscar? So here's the thing. Oscar's a kid, first of
transphobic and
all.
he's canceled.
I mean, Oscar. Here's the thing, though. Oscar is in the book, from what I understand from reading the synopsis and reading about kind of how it was handled. Oscar is transphobic,
Oh.
but he's also a 12-year-old in
right,
80s
he's kind of
Sweden.
like, yeah, kind of innocuously just ignorantly transphobic rather than
And as a 12-year-old boy who's already being bullied in the 80s would be, the first thing he's worried about is, oh my God, does that mean I'm gay?
right, yeah.
So like that's kind of the level that we're operating on in the books as far as Oscar goes.
Huh.
Mhm.
I like the change in the movie that when he learns everything about Ellie and his main worry is, hey, you kill people. Like, I actually
Yeah.
don't, gender notwithstanding, you have killed many people.
Yeah, let's-
And she's like, yeah.
Let's talk for a second about that the gender reveal scene where
Mm.
he asks her if she wants to be his girlfriend and she says, well, I'm not a girl. And he's like, oh, I mean, do you want to date anyway though? Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't give it a second. He's just like, oh, okay, but like
He's like, I just really like you.
Yeah.
Pansexual Oscar for the win.
Yeah.
He literally does not give a shit.
And then he
I
goes and he
liked
gets
how that
jacked.
happened.
Yeah.
Good for him. Yeah, I did like how they did that in the movie, honestly. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed I've seen that done in an Our Flag Means Death has
Oh, yeah?
kind of a similar vibe to it, where characters kind of interrogate a character who has come out of a disguise, and they're like, you guys have been calling me this name. Can you just do that? I'm not like a man or a woman. And everyone's immediately like, okay.
Yeah.
And they're like, sure,
Yeah,
totally.
not a
And
thing.
I really like that, because personally, when I write non-binary characters, I just kind of have it be a known in the world settings that I have, because I'm not writing the real world.
Right, yeah.
But I enjoy the style of coming out where they're just immediate, like, it's not like a nothing. It's not like a, like, oh, we could tell, or, oh, like, just kind of brush it off. It's a, yeah, that's you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
I remember
I really like that.
years ago, we had a pretty extensive conversation about queer identities in fantasy worlds. And is it best to just, like, if you have a non-binary character that uses they, them pronouns, should they just, everybody knows to refer to them as like using they, them pronouns? Or do you have to have scenes that kind of like go through that regularly, where they're constantly having to do that, and kind of like what that's like in fantasy, or how you do that? And we haven't, like, I really enjoyed those conversations about your writing and like queer identity and stuff. Like, those were great conversations, and I always thought they were really cool.
Yeah, I miss those a lot too, because especially back then, and this is one of those conversations, so welcome back. But back then I wasn't comfortable in my own queer identity, and so a lot of it was me approaching it as needing someone to sensitivity check it for me, as what I considered myself to be a cis woman, trying to write queer identities.
Sort of distanced self-exploration in a way.
Well, yeah, I had no idea. I was fully identifying as a cis woman, and I was like, well, Emma knows. There were often times that I would be like, I don't think this is gender, like, questioning. I think this is like a response to the trauma of being raised assigned female at birth.
Oh, sure.
So that was what I kind of handled it as for a long time. But
in a church, no less.
the reason that I've come around to the way that I write non-binary characters specifically, but it will expand to my trans masc characters, who are canon in my heart, but since it doesn't come up in the story, like, no one will ever know, because I don't feel the need, and I don't feel it's appropriate to like out the character just to like be like, here's representation. It's like, no, he's trans, and I know that, and I'm writing him that way, but no one else may ever pick up on that. But like, that has its own issues. But the thing is, I'm writing these books, and I'm writing them because I now know that I am like not cis. I know that this is the way I would prefer to be treated, and this is the way that I would prefer that it could go in the real world. And since I'm writing this kind of idealized queer normative society, I have made the decision for my books that there's no coming out scenes, and nobody's gender comes up unless it like would have to. But even then, I try really hard not to put characters in a position where it would have. They are whatever gender they are, and everyone knows that, because I wish it worked that way in real life. But yeah.
I think I would not want this to happen in one of your books, but it'd be funny in your world if one day big bad guy with like a huge crew, and like there's a non-binary protagonist like going against them, and then the bad guy intentionally misgenders them, and the whole crew is like, oh, and they turn against the big bad guy. Just because, like, that is not okay.
We were on board with slaughtering half the kingdom, but I draw the line.
I did have a scene in book 3 that I cut, where it wasn't even an intentional misgendering, but in the fact that it happened, it's just a character talking about someone who he's never heard their genders before and has no reason to know that they use they them pronouns. So he uses he him pronouns. But I don't have an assigned gender at birth for Asa. I've never decided one. So I realized that in having a character misgender them at all, because he takes it right, he's a villain, but he takes the correction right away. The other character who has met Asa is immediately like, oh, them, and he's like, oh, them, sorry, and like continues on. And I'm like, that's so unnecessary, and it doesn't add anything apart from like, you know, that it maybe would happen in the real world. I guess it's realistic, but it does give the first inkling I've ever given in over 200,000 words that Asa might have an assigned gender at birth. So I was like, yeet.
Get that out of there.
Incredible. And hey, Nina Wolverina fans, I just got us a nice little like tease into book 3.
Yeah.
There you go.
I got you talking about it, loser.
Yeah. But yeah, I love, that's all to say, I love seeing, now that I'm like more comfortable with myself, I love seeing how other people do it. And I think a big part of that, which I've spoken about to, I think both of you before, was Our Flag Means Death, because I'd never seen a non-binary character almost ever at all, but definitely never one that was played by a Puerto Rican actor, and not one that was like, in a lot of ways looks like me and acts like me. And I was like, oh my god, this is literally the first time I have ever been fully represented on screen. And it was a really eye-opening moment. I'm about to cry. It was a really eye-opening moment of like, oh, this is what that feels like. And it allowed me to kind of be more honest with myself. And I have messaged Vico Ortiz about this on Instagram at length. So they know how I feel, hopefully.
They're fucking incredible. They're fucking
They're
icon.
so cool. I like aspire to be as cool as Vico is. But yeah, anyway, that being said, that's why I liked how this movie handled it up until kind of the scene with the scar, which is an interesting way of kind of like visually canonizing what has verbally been implied, which is something that like in movies people love to just ignore when a character says they aren't cis.
Yeah.
People love that shit. So I get that like showing the scar can be like, oh, you are not getting around this. So you cannot like in forums deny that this is a reality for this character.
It's there.
But also, given how I just said I like to write my own personal preference for trans characters, that kind of goes directly against what I prefer in media. But, you know.
Additionally, it's not really clear whether this is intentional or not, but that one sweater that she wears, I don't know if you saw it. Yeah, it's got the little trans stripes down on the ends of the sleeves.
On the sleeves and around the waist, yeah.
That's cool. I liked that. This is not really about the movie, but something I think is funny. So on IMDb,
only
most
loosely
of this
talking
cast,
about Let the Right One In today.
This cast, most of this cast hasn't like acted in much, I don't think, and so their pictures on IMDb are from this movie.
The kid who plays Oscar literally hasn't done anything since 2014, and I say good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. But the actress who plays Virginia, her picture is her on fire in the hospital bed. And then
she's so valid for that. Oh my god.
The kid who plays Connie, his picture is all of the dismembered bodies at the end by the pool.
Oh my god.
I'm guessing that means this movie was fun to work on. That's the vibes that gives me.
I hope.
Yeah.
Speaking of, do we want to talk
hey
about...
guys, look at my dismantled body.
Do we want to talk about that scene just for a minute? Because
the pool scene?
Yeah, I think it's really cool. We got the one bigger kid grabbing Oscar by the hair and forcing his head underwater, saying that if he comes up in under 3 minutes, then he's going to like cut his eye out. And then everything that happens while Oscar is underwater, and all we see is Oscar under the water. But then we see we hear muffled noises like you would through water. And you see some other kids like sneakers getting dragged through the pool, and at first he's kicking and then he's just not.
Yeah.
And then you
then
just
like
see a
I think a
severed
ripped
head.
off arm or something.
It's a severed
yeah.
head just drops
Severed
into the water
head.
in the same area. And then you keep hearing the noises and stuff, and eventually the hand that is holding Oscar's hair just falls down into the water, now detached from its body. And
Yeah.
Oscar
I
pops
love
up
it.
and all the kids are dead.
It's the most violent we've seen Ellie. Because
Yeah,
typically Ellie is like
focused at
kills to
least.
feed
Yeah,
and
alone.
is like
Mhm.
very, very in and out
Mm.
on that and doesn't really do much else
Yeah.
beyond that. But when she is here, she's pissed. It doesn't seem like she's fed on any of them. Unlike
No,
even the
that's
guy
not
who
what this
broke
is
in and tried
about.
to kill her.
Yeah.
She's been pissed at these guys the whole fucking movie. She's been like, stop picking on my boy.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's why it's perfect for Gay Wrath Month.
Oh
Yeah,
shit!
that
This is Gay
that was
Wrath Month.
incredibly,
Yeah.
incredibly good gay wrath representation of just murdering
Totally
these
unintentional, but
assholes.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I am not sure what to do with in this movie is the whole like subplot with Oscar's parents. I get that most
Yeah.
of what's being accomplished is just sort of establishing that he does not feel wanted by either of them, and that's why he doesn't really have many qualms about leaving.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it feels like they're still both too present in the movie in a way,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Those scenes felt weird, and I felt like the whole, like I get the subplot of, this person that Ellie killed is like friends with these people, and now these people are trying to figure out like what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I get like why it's there, but all of those felt like some of the least interesting scenes to me in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly had erased them from my mind until you mentioned that just now.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, so my favorite book in the whole wide world is Sweeney Todd and the String of Pearls.
Right.
Hell
And
yeah.
it does a very similar thing of swapping between Sweeney's story and the story of the normal fucking people who are looking for him looking for who killed like someone's fiance.
Mm.
And when I did my first read through, and honestly, every time since now that I've read the whole thing all at once, I skip the like civilian part. I'm like, I'm not here for you, Joanna. I love you I love what she does at the end, but honestly, you don't need the entire like story to kind of understand where she's at when when the two storylines meet up. So I just throw that to the
Just
wind.
completely
Fuck
ignore
that
the whole
shit.
thing. Only read half the book.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, well, yeah, because it was written by two different authors, published every other chapter. Each
Oh.
chapter published as a Penny Dreadful.
Okay.
So it's like 1 week you get a Sweeney chapter, the next week you get a Joanna chapter,
Okay.
and so on and so forth.
And each
think
perspective
that's
is written
a
by
fun
different
way to
author.
do
It's
it.
fun. It's cool. It's interesting. But
I think that's a fun way to do it while it's releasing. But I think
Yes.
definitely like when you're looking at it as a collective, you're like, I don't want these.
yeah,
I might
it's like
only
these
like one
feel-
of these stories actually.
I get why they're here. But as a cohesive, like same thing within Let the Right One In. I get why it's there. I just don't think that it actually makes the movie as a cohesive work like fit.
Mhm.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's intended. It's clearly intended to be a little bit slow moving, and
Mhm.
I don't mind that. I mean,
Yeah,
all of my
we know.
previous, everyone knows I don't mind a movie being a little slow moving. That said, this one did have me checking how much time was left on it a bit more often than I would like.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
lots
another
of times
reason.
a slow moving movie will be engaging enough that like I'll get through the whole thing without checking how much is left on it at all. Whereas this,
Yeah.
I checked like 6 times, I think. It's
Yeah.
2 hours long, and you do feel every possible minute of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not.
And sometimes
normally-
that's a good thing.
Sure,
And sometimes
yeah,
that's a bad
Absolutely.
thing.
I don't know what I would try to cut from it necessarily without
Yeah.
doing some like actual story editing or something, but like it does feel like there's just a little bit more there than there ought to be.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot that could be cut and other parts that could do more with it.
Could be maybe
I think.
expanded on a little bit.
Yeah, as
But
much as I really love all of the vampire lore, it really feels like it picks and chooses which ones it wants to focus on based on the like scene that is happening.
100%, yeah.
Uh,
mhm.
it feels a little bit inconsistent. I couldn't say that they ever picked up or dropped specific vampire traits. Like I couldn't say like, oh, she does this here and then she doesn't do the other thing there. Um,
Mhm.
but like it felt like kind of stop and go on that. Also, I just made the connection that the whole vampires like to count thing might be why she's so into fucking puzzles.
I did actually
Oh,
think that was probably like a little bit of the reference being made there, yeah.
that's
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah.
I
I did like that
didn't think
she
about that.
has a hobby. Like when you have infinite time to do things,
Yeah.
puzzles seem like a good hobby to have.
Yeah, and she's unfortunate enough to have not reached the internet age yet.
I
She'll
love
get
the
there
whole
soon.
the Rubik's cube of like,
Yeah.
what the fuck is this?
Yeah,
and he
the way
like
she's
looks
just
at her
so
like she's
mystified
crazy.
by it initially.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's a Rubik's cube. Have you never seen a Rubik's cube
And
before?
she's just like, how does it work? What do you do?
Yeah.
And then she solves it in one day. I love that.
I love when he asks her about it. He's like, how did you figure it out? And she goes, I just twisted it.
I also love the kind of play on the Twilight conversation, but I think this movie does it better and funnier. Of like, how old are you? 12-ish. Oh, I'm 12 in this exact many months and
Yeah.
days. What the fuck do you mean
I love
12-ish?
the way that he said the kid who plays Oscar is so fucking good.
He is.
Because like
Mhm.
so much of his acting is not even in the delivery of his lines necessarily. It's all in like faces that he makes in reaction to things.
Yeah.
And it's not like
It's very natural.
yeah, his reactions aren't like over like they're not like exaggerated or anything, like stage reactions or something. It's very like kind of understated and like maintaining that Midwestern vibe that I mentioned earlier. But like it always gets his feelings across so well. This kid's really good.
Yeah. I loved his performance, honestly. I know that I mentioned in the past not being sure if kid actors were really good if they were in a different language. But unlike
This kid,
with
you can
Rare
tell.
Exports, this kid I'm like him and Ellie's actress.
Both of them, yeah, actually.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really liked a lot of their facial acting through a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would like to talk about the blood harvesting scenes.
I would
love to hear about the
talk
blood
about the blood
blood-
harvesting scenes.
The blood fisting. Yeah.
The
I think-
Blardsard.
As mentioned previously, I mean, I think they're some of what make this movie horror.
Yeah.
Because there's two of them and they're both very intense. The first one is intense because he's fucking doing it out in an open field.
Yeah, just out
Yeah,
in the
that
open.
looks like
You're like,
literally the
People
worst
can
place.
see you, sir.
Yeah.
And then you're stressed, and then you hear like dogs coming.
And then he
You're
fucks
like,
it up.
"Oh,
He
fuck."
spills the blood.
He spills the blood, but he
Oh
gets
my
out of
God.
there. And then the next one is really disturbing. He has like this student tied up upside down that he knocked unconscious. And then the guy wakes up and starts kind of like begging. And then the dude's friends show up and they're like, hey, what the fuck are you doing in there? And like the guy is just kind of like trapped in there
Yeah.
and just like him kind of panicking, trying to figure out like what to do and then just giving up. And he's like, okay, acid time.
Yeah, you get
It's
to
all like
watch
so fucked.
You get to watch the whole realization dawn on him as he just like sits there thinking like, oh shit, I am so fucked right now. I am getting caught 100%. There's nothing I can do about it. And then he picks up what's left of his jar of acid that he's already spilled most of by accident.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
love
Oh.
those kinds of scenes. I feel like there are similar scenes. Obviously, Father Paul after he kills the first like person
Very
in
much.
Midnight Mass,
Very
and
much.
he's like crawled into the corner and just waiting for people to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like any scene where a character just knows that they have no way out is kind of like some of my favorite shit.
Yeah.
I eat that up every time.
And like this isn't even a character that we care about. We don't like this guy. All we've really gotten
Nope.
from him is blood harvesting scenes where he fucks up literally every time.
He fucks up
Everything that
every
he does
time.
for Ellie, he fucks it up somehow. Literally, I get the impression he probably hasn't been working for her for very long, maybe.
I
Maybe.
thought I was with Emma on the like he's been doing this for like a long
Hmm.
time, but I was kind of on the end of he's been doing this for too long and he's fucking
Yeah.
tired and they've been
Yeah, and he's
moving
just slipping.
constantly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. That maybe makes more sense. But yeah, just like as he like, walks away from the door as the guys get ready to like bust it down, and he's just kind of like hiding around the corner having his little quiet moment before dumping the acid on his face. And you get the like what is it? It's not a piano, but it's I think a guitar that sounds extremely like a piano that starts playing.
As you do.
Yeah.
And
When
like
he was just like, when he went around the corner, I was like, is he just going to hide around the corner and then get away from this?
yeah, there's a moment where you're like,
and
is
then he
just
pulled
gonna
out the
hide?
acid, and I
But-
was like, oh, fuck.
yeah, and then the music starts playing, and you're like, oh shit, I do think I know what's about to happen. And I still didn't really expect him to act that moment the way that he did, because I didn't
Yeah.
think they were going to show it necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
They only give us like a moment of his reaction, but I do like that they gave us the amount they gave us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
That and then his actual death scene from the hospital, I really enjoyed the way that Ellie like
Mhm.
flies up and sits on the window, and he opens it up and just lets her drain him of his blood, and he falls down. This is the best body falling out of a window shot that I've seen in recent memory. It's clearly they're using like a very heavy doll or something, right? But the way that they have him just drop and then smack off of that like canopy as he gets closer to the ground, that shit hits for me every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea
Yeah.
of falling off of something really high is already scary enough, but then to be like, you might hit something else before the ground actually. For some reason, that shit freaks me the hell out.
Yeah, I'm with ya.
Really good shot. They make the mannequin a little bit
Mhm.
less obvious by having it be like out of focus for most of the fall. It makes the whole thing look really natural.
See, what else do we want to talk about? Is there anything else we want to talk about?
Couple of small things. When when Oscar gets beat up by the bullies, and they're like they have that like switch that they're whipping him with, and then the one kid like hits him
Oh,
across
yeah.
the face, so he's got like the cut on his cheek.
Yeah.
And then all the kids run away because one of them says, "Who's going to talk to his mom?" And Oscar just stands there as they run away, and you just hear them like laughing and yelling as they run away and stuff, and he's just standing there, hasn't moved yet. And then he says, "I fell down during recess." And then it cuts to him talking to his mom, and he has just told her that he fell down during recess. I love a scene that transitions with a character saying the same line in two different instances, but you just hear the one. I think that's really cool. I don't know a better way to describe that particular instance, but it's like, you watch Oscar sit there and come up with his lie, and then he says it for the first time to like practice it. And then it cuts to him like having the conversation with his mom. I think that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. Couple fun facts. Almost every scene in the movie contains the color red or orange. Obviously a reference to blood.
Oh shit.
Um,
I didn't notice
and-
that. There's not a whole lot of like other warm colors in the movie though. It's
No.
the color palette is very drab, very winter in Sweden, very lifeless.
yeah.
Kind of reminded me of like Black Coat's Daughter or something like that. Kind of
Oh,
shot
yeah.
similarly, right?
Yeah. Both the writer of this film and story and the director of this film admitted that they do not like or care for vampires.
That's funny.
Well, okay, so I want to elaborate on that, honestly,
Yeah.
Okay,
or I want to
yeah.
like say something about that. I can tell, but like in a good way. I think there's something to be said for people who don't particularly love the monster or creature or whatever they're working with, kind of making themselves like it by interpreting it a certain way. And this is kind of one of those things where it feels like, because a lot of the vampire stuff is just done as like a, you know how vampires work, we're doing it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Feels like we don't particularly love vampires, because a lot of love letters to vampires end up being like fucking Castlevania or like
Or
Only Lovers Left Alive
or What We Do in the
um,
Shadows, but
What We Do in the Shadows. But What We Do in the Shadows
it's
is
comedy,
all
so it's
very,
like the
tongue in cheek.
yeah, the rules are different.
Yeah. But a lot of the time it can get very hung up on like trying really hard to get the vampire aesthetics down. And this one is like, fuck the aesthetics, we're doing the mechanics only. And I kind of appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah, it's kind of like having the story be centered around the thing that you're not really into kind of makes you direct the writing in a different direction from it. So the movie doesn't really consider itself to be a vampire movie. It's a movie with a vampire in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sort of that Crimson Peak ghost thing.
This is a funny one.
Okay.
So I mentioned in the spoiler summary that at the end, they're like, Oscar's in a train with Ellie in a box, and from inside, Ellie taps the word kiss in Morse code, and he taps back small kiss. Well, in Swedish,
oh yeah,
how you spell kiss is P-U-S-S. And so this like fun fact is like in the film's final scene, Oscar and Ellie use Morse code to communicate. They're tapping out the letters P-U-S-S, which in Swedish for kiss. And I thought that was funny.
It is. It really is. Yeah, kind of like there's a scene in the movie where it cuts to like the outside of a building and it has a sign that just says bad. I think the Swedish language just has a lot of little coincidences that make it line up with English in some really funny ways.
Yeah,
because like
for sure.
I don't know if you've seen this on the internet at all, but it gets shared around on Tumblr every now and then. When Swedish movies and older Swedish movies end, and the words "the end" come up on the screen. You remember when movies used to do that. The term in Swedish for the movie is over. The word that you put up on the screen to indicate that is slut.
I have seen that. Yeah. Oh my god, that's incredible. I didn't know what that was from.
That's what that is.
Or like the explanation.
That just means the end.
It's so funny.
That's so good.
Oh, I love it so much.
Unfortunately, we don't have any Noah notes for this one.
No, there are no notes. No.
This is the
There's
first
no replacement
time.
either because I didn't fucking bother to take notes.
That's okay. No worries at all.
I took notes so we can see if my best
Do you have any juicy ones?
My best one is this one that in all caps just says, "Is our boy Oscar getting jacked?"
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. Honestly, it's probably a good thing that we don't have any notes this week because I don't think we can top Turkey.
No, I have a Bonesaw reference
Turkey
in my
is so
notes
good.
for some reason, but it's not as good as Turkey.
Bonesaw reference is peak.
Bonesaw from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
From Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Bonesaw's ready.
Yeah, because at the end of the movie, the guy says you got to stay underwater for 3 minutes. So I was like, "Oh, I got you for 3 minutes." And
That's really good.
That is really good. So in lieu of Noah's notes, unless Jeff has any others,
no,
do you
my
want to tell
notes
us?
are not as fun as his ever.
Noah's very stream of consciousness notes make my day. And when my mom was visiting, she was like, "What?" My mom. She's like, "What do you like? What are some things you like about Noah?" And in my heart, I know she wouldn't get it because she just doesn't think the things that I think are funny are very funny.
Oh, no.
But if I could put her in my shoes as I read Noah's notes each week, I would like to think that she'd finally understand. But what movie are we watching next week? Or next time?
Well, we have our next 2 movies planned, but I don't think we had determined the order, did we?
I said very explicitly.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. I just forgot because I don't listen good.
Me neither.
Next time, we're going to be watching
the
the movie Watcher from 2022.
Yay! I have seen this movie before.
As have I.
And I did not like it.
Oh, no?
So you've talked very positively about it. And I'm
really
like, I want to
it.
give this movie like another chance and kind of like read into it a little bit more. So I'm interested to see how I feel about it this time.
I don't know necessarily that there's anything like super, super deep going on in it. It's kind of one of those movies that's primarily carried by one specific actress's performance because most of the movie is just kind of her doing her thing.
She does very good.
And she does real good at that, right?
Yeah.
So that's primarily what I like about it is I think she does it really well. I don't know that it's got a ton of depth to it necessarily, though I will be looking for that.
Yeah. I'm not going to say anything.
All right.
I'll save it for
Fair enough.
episode.
I've probably said too
But
much.
I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah.
And then after that, we're doing 1408. Is that right?
That is the plan, yeah.
Which is
Cool.
a movie I know nothing about.
I know absolutely
Noah-
nothing other than it's based on a Stephen King?
It's another haunted hotel movie.
Yeah, another Stephen King haunted hotel.
Oh, I remember trailers for this way back in the
Yes, me
day.
too. Not trailers, but I remember seeing like it like after it had gone on discount because it had been out for a few years and being like, the fuck is this?
Whatever happened to John Cusack?
He was in that movie 2012, wasn't he? Yeah, back in 2012, only a couple
I
years
remember
after 1408. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen a trailer for it or heard much about it at all. All I know is every time I hear the title 1408, I think of the band 1349, which has nothing to do with anything. They have that name because that's the year that the Black Plague reached Norway, and they're a black metal band, so that's just what they do.
Oh,
Yeah.
John Cusack was in Con Air.
Oh wow, okay. He's in all
I
the
was
good
gonna
action
say.
movies, huh?
I was gonna say. After that, we said we were going to watch. Oh, that's 1408. We talked about
Yeah.
that. We've also talked about. This is just a preview for all you listeners. We've talked about watching Seven, which Emma said they didn't know what that was, right?
Is that the one? What's in the box?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
That's all I know about that movie.
How much
me
else
too,
is
but
there
Noah.
to know about it, really?
I think there's something about the 7 deadly sins and murder.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Noah has said in the past that it's the movie that like got him interested in horror as like a concept. So that's part of why I want to watch it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
See-
when we first started this podcast, I'm pretty sure we all kind of talked about like what was our like first experience with horror, and he said Seven and like those just the Morgan Freeman like mystery thrillers in general.
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah.
a very big thing for him for a while.
The first movie to do that for me was Prisoners, which is also not technically a horror movie.
I've heard it's
But-
a rough watch.
It's extremely good. It is a rough watch. It's like it's
Isn't Hugh
such a
Jackman in
rough.
that one?
It is
Oh.
Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal,
Oh.
and
Yeah.
it might pair well with Seven. If we wanted to do a little 2-episode special, because I would
Maybe
love
when we
to
get
watch
there.
it again and hear what you all thought.
Yeah. I think
We might need to. What we might need to do is just. I think we talked about this in the past. Is doing the watch the movies that got us into horror and talk about them because I
that
know we didn't
could
want to
be
do
Oh,
that
that'd
too
be
early.
fun.
a very fun
Yeah.
series.
I like that.
Now, when we say the
Let's
movies
do
that got
it.
us into horror, we're not necessarily saying like first horror movies that we watched, right?
No.
Yeah.
This is movies that like kind of cracked the like door and were like, oh, I'm okay with scary stuff. So it's not necessarily because I would say that mine was. I know that we've talked about this because I got a lot into horror books, but as like horror movie media,
Right.
it would have to be either like Coraline or Silence of the Lambs.
Which is
Both
interesting because
fantastic
Silence of the
movies.
Lambs was actually one of the first horror movies that I ever watched. It was
I
like
think we've,
that,
I swear to
Alien,
God, I have to
Terminator, and
re-listen.
then, Nightmare on Elm Street, actually.
I have to re-listen to the early podcast episodes because I swear to God, we have had this exact
I
conversation.
wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah.
I just don't remember.
Yeah, I think I listed Prisoners, and then my first like actual horror movie was Cabin in the Woods, which you all
Yep.
joked and you're like, is that actually a horror movie? And I was like,
It's really
"Yes,
funny for that
it's a
one to be
horror,
your
like,
first actual
comedy."
horror movie because of the way that it
Yeah.
is. Like,
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
so funny. Okay, yeah. So that's just a preview for y'all, a peek behind the curtain. But yeah, that's what we're up to. Until next time, you can find the podcast at Casual Horror Pod on the sinking ship that is Twitter. You can also find us on Tumblr at Casual Horror Pod, I believe. Tumblr, did I say Twitter twice? I meant Tumblr.
No,
No,
you
you
said
did it right.
Tumblr.
You did it right.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. And you can find me, Nina. That's me, Nina.
Oh.
At at Nina Wolverina on Twitter and Instagram. I'm deep in book promo mode, but I'm also DMing a horror western D&D campaign. So that's all that I'm tweeting about right now are those two things off and on sporadically. And then you can also find me on Tumblr at Nina Wolverina. It's with the E,
Well, yeah,
the
but
3 instead of the E.
Yeah. It's not really Wolverina.
Yeah.
It's Wolf 3.
No, but that's how I say it in my head every time I read it.
It's a way better way to do it, but
Yeah, but it doesn't make any
Nah.
sense. Anyway, that's where you can
Yeah,
find me on Tumblr.
and in any
I'm way
case,
more
you can
unhinged.
also follow me, Jeff, which is me, Jeff, on if you're still on Twitter at Bubba Wubba Dab, but you could also find me on Tumblr at What Is It You Pray For, where I'm trying to be a little bit more active. I waxed a little too poetic about a Pink Floyd album a little while ago. Maybe you read that. Who knows? You can also find me on Letterboxd at The Fakest Fan.
Nice. And I'm Emma, also known as Emma Fanata. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at Emma Fanata. I'm also writing a TTRPG called All the Witches. You can find information about that at allthewitches_ at twitter.com. And yeah, thanks so much for hanging out with us, everybody. We really appreciate it. We hope you have a great next 2 weeks, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.